Hello, my name's Fraser Hines. I played Jamie McCrimmon, longest running companion.
Hi, my name's Colin Spore, and I played in the classic series. I played a character called Lilt, totally tropical, and then in the latest series with David Tennant and Billy, I played Mr. Crane.
We'll just keep talking. We'll go over the sun. Welcome, students. No eating in class, please. All pizzas away. Today we're going to talk about Doctor Who.
Yes, we're talking about the classic series, I think, are we not?
Yes, that's right.
So I suppose the first thing really I think that we ought to start with is the fact that the difference between doing the classic and the new series. Do you agree with that?
Yes, yeah, totally.
Right, the main thing that I find, and I'm sure that Fraser will find it as well, is the fact when we did the classic series, I did the one with Colin Baker as the Doctor, and when we did that, we had a week and a half's rehearsal time. So you go in on Monday morning, you have your script, you sit around a large table, a cup of coffee, and then you read through the script. And then once that's done, a rough timing is taken, and then once that's done, the floor manager will mark out the floor of the studio where you're working so that you know there's the door there, and there's the TARDIS here, and whatever. And then you would, what we call blocking, you would block. Your script move, turn right, or say that, move over, run away from the Dalek, and all that goes on. And then you then begin to work on it, and then you begin to get your character, because you then begin to bounce off the other actor. You learn what he's going to do and what the way he says it and various things like that, so you can actually work off of him. And then after that...
You can bounce off Colin Baker now.
You can bounce off Colin Baker now, he's a very large man. And then we get to the studio, we have about a day's camera and tech run, and then we shoot it. Now, today...
Now, in the old microphone irking, would you just put microphone irking? Okay. Look, don't sit down there. Or your finger out and just plug it. Thank you. That's better. Now, in my day, in the old days, when we did a black and white, we would do it exactly as Colin said, we'd rehearse it. But when you got to the studio on a Saturday morning, you would film it from page 1 right through to page 55 or 60, whatever it was. And they didn't have the editing techniques as they did today. I mean, today, if you cock up, you can say, oh, sorry, can we go back to those 2 lines and pick up a close-up, and then you carry on. But we had to actually, a director would say, do the inside of the TARDIS, then if the story was outside the TARDIS, you go outside the TARDIS, then maybe back inside the TARDIS again. You do 3 scenes all together, because the tape was that thick, they couldn't actually edit it. And it would be tired if you could have cocked your last line up on the 3rd scene, because you'd have to go back to the beginning of that 1st scene and do it all over again. And we shot it as live television. We had to finish at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday, whether you got it, you had to get it in. Luckily, most of us were theatre trained, so we were all used to actually doing 25, maybe 30 pages all in one go, whereas a lot of people today, 4 pages and they'd be lost.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And also, there's quite a few funny things happen. One of the particular things that I remember, a guy called Terry Malloy, who played Davros, we were doing a camera rehearsal in full makeup and costume, and he came out of the makeup department with his, you all know Davros, of course, with his head on, and he came up to me and said, God, have I got a head on me this morning? It just made me laugh. I just thought I'd share that with you.
Did anybody see The Tomb of the Cybermen? Because we had a very strict director called Maurice Barry in those days, for that particular story. And he would rehearse you. He'd have a music stand, and he'd rehearse you with little marks, J1, Jamie 1, J2. We got to the studio, and he looked, and he said, this is totally wrong, it's not my camera plan. I want you to move the set. Now, instead of moving his cameras, we broke for coffee and they moved the set. He had no sense of humour at all. And Patrick and I, in The Tomb of the Cybermen, we had a little thing, why do we grab each other's hand, thinking it's Victoria's hand? We knew if we went to Maurice Barry, he'd go, no, stop fooling about it, that's silly, you're not going to do that. So we actually we waited till the take, And then we actually grabbed it. Come on, Victoria, yes, come on. We grabbed each other's hand and went back to Victoria. He couldn't do a retake. You couldn't afford to do a retake. We knew that. As long as the rest of the scene was fine, Morris Barry was seething, but he couldn't do a retake. That's why, if you notice, we pick our hands are quite high because we didn't know where the camera was shooting. If it was a waist high, we grabbed each other like that. It might look, so we grabbed something else. So that's why Patrick and I would say, "Come on, Victoria," you know, and then still that sort of Laurel and Hardy. So that's why in the tune it was our little gag, and we put in, but that wasn't rehearsed, only between the two of us.
Well, something else that I was going to say, actually, you probably know that Graham Harper is a very well-known director of Doctor Who, and also happens to be a very close personal friend of mine. But I've known Graham for many, many, many years, and I phoned him up one day, and I said, "Oh, Graham, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm going to do a Doctor Who." And of course, all actors say, "Oh, anything in it for me?" He said, "No." So I said, "Well, Graham." And then a few days later, he phoned me, he said, "Yes, there is." He said, "Would you like to come in and read for the part of the mutant at the very beginning of the movie?" I said, "Terrific, I'd love to do it." "Thanks, Graham, really." I was out of work at the time. "Yeah, thanks, mate." So anyway,
no acting required.
No acting required whatsoever. And so I went along, and then Graham said, "Right, I've decided," he said, "actually not to give you the part of the mutant." He said, "I'm going to let you play a character called Wilt." And that's how that started. But what I'm going to say is that I have a lovely story, because I turned that part down, sort of turned that part down, and the next person that he was offered to, Laurence Olivier. Absolutely true. We'd heard, or Graham heard, that he was a fan of Doctor Who, so he thought, "Well, I wonder if he'd just come in and do a small part like the mutant, you know, freezing cold." It was very shot, the weather was like 12 below zero, and snow, and this guy was in this pond, and I could just see Laurence Olivier coming out with all the sous vide on his head. He didn't do it, actually, obviously. But yeah, that's, I turned a part down, and it was offered to Laurence Olivier. Isn't that brilliant?
That's a great story.
That's a lovely story, yes.
I get a lot of kids coming up to me and saying, "Oh, 12 years old, you know, we weren't alive when you did the black and white stuff, but we've started to watch it."
Nor was I.
Well, I was very young. I had a nappy under my kilt. That's how young I was. And they loved the black. People at BBC said, "Oh, we don't like showing black and white." But kids loved the black and white, because black and white, I think, is more terrifying. Blood is a better colour in black and white than it is in colour, because you can get the right colour. And shadows in black and white, in black and white, somebody can step out of a shadow and grab you. Whereas with colour, black, for enough, is not a colour. So to step out of the shadows, you have to come from way back here, because the black blends out. You don't get the shock element at all. So a lot of the black and white stuff is more horrifying, I think, than it is with the colour stuff today.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, yeah.
And their budget, we were doing a documentary, Wendy Padry and myself, and we actually broke the coffee and said, "I wonder what the budget was in those days, when we were doing the Dominators." And he came back with a big sort of fool's cap with a ribbon, blew the dust off it, and he opened this paper thing and went, "Right, you were on £40 an episode, Fraser, the set cost £1,200, so they'd kept the paperwork, the BBC, but they'd thrown away the shows." They kept the paperwork.
How strange is that? How strange is that? Right, shall we throw this up and see if anyone want to ask us anything at all?
Yeah.
Anything at all? Nothing to do with Doctor Who. We don't want to talk about Doctor Who, we'll talk about something else. Anybody want to say anything or ask us anything?
Yes.
I did notice one thing, because like I just recently got through the sci-fi, and you mentioning how it's as close to a slide as you get. And I noticed how like some people end up fumbling the lines here and there.
You do notice in a lot of black and white stuff, there's, you know, the odd sort of fumble of a line, or somebody will just say something quite. And in those days, nowadays you say, "Oh, swear, cut, go back." But in those days, unless the set fell over, something really dreadful happened, you just carried on, with it. Yes. How was it during the first season? Well, for me, my character was only in one story originally, called The Highlanders, and just 4 episodes. And after about episode 2, the BBC were getting phone calls and letters from the viewers saying, why doesn't Jamie stay as a companion in the TARDIS? And he had a Highland accent because it was set in 1746. And of course, the Highland accent is very much like this, and all up and down, and very, very... When I realised I was going to stay for another year, I thought, you can't get a lot of drama into the Highland. Oh, Doctor, look at the size of that monster. He'll be after chasing us. Let us run for our lives. You can't get the drama in, see. Whereas, look at the size of that thing, Doctor. Quick, run, I'll fight it off. You can get more drama. So, as I went on, I sort of watered my Highland accent into sort of what everybody knows now as a Scottish accent. And that's why he... In fact, we found or somebody's found the Underwater Menace, which is episode 2, which is my second story, and I'm still in my original kilt, and I can't wait to see it when I get back to England, because I want to see if, you know, my accent is kind of still there.
Yeah.
The Highland.
Any more? I need to ask. Yes?
One of the scenes did you do hand grab? I know there was a lot of different hand grabs moments in the second Doctor. Did you do any other moments like that?
In the
we did. I think it's in The Invasion when we were supposed to be just walking down the street and we see this car, and we said to Dougie Camfield, who was a lovely director. He was a fantastic. He loved actors. He was great for cameras. Everybody loved him. Did you ever work with Douglas Camfield? He was a lovely man. He would use you again if you liked to. And we just said, Patrick and I said, instead of walking just down the road and this car comes up and grabs us, why don't we just start to walk down and we see this car and we walk a bit faster and we walk a bit faster. And in the end, we're running like the Wile E. Coyote chasing the road runner, you know, run, like that. So that's little things. We were allowed to put little things in like that. With me, Jamie-isms, as I call it. Jamie was great. He could ask the questions that the kid watching the TV set would ask. If you get the Doctor and 2 professors, nobody can ask questions because they all know the answer. But Jamie can ask those sort of questions. There's a story when we met the Emperor Dalek, this huge Dalek, and you know, Dalek has these sphericals. And my line in the script was, look at the balls on that thing. True. And every time I said it, I laughed. Paddy Russell, the director, said, for goodness sake, grow up, you're grown men. Stop. In the end, I changed it to, look at the size of that thing, though. Yes, Jamie, it is a big one, isn't it? Yes. 16 years later, we do the 2 Doctors. The opening scene, I'm looking at the scanner, and I see this space station. The script says, look at the size of that space station, Doctor. So, of course, on the rehearsal, the producers run, we've rehearsed all week, producers run, John Nathan Turner's over the script, and I say, look at the size of that thing. And stop. The script phrase says, look at the size of the space station. And Patrick said, no. At the beginning of every story, Jamie always says, look at the size of that thing, Doctor. And I go, yes, Jamie, it is a big one, isn't it? And that's in the scene. If you watch The Seeds of Death, we slip that in as we go into the museum, the TARDIS lands in the museum, and I see this rocket ship. I go, we didn't tell Wendy Padbury either, we just ad-libbed it. I said, look at the size of that thing. Yes, Jamie, it is rather big. And then she came with her line. So we always had little things like that. And I'm sure some of the writers actually wrote things in for us to see if we would spot those sort of little gags.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm always interested in get the script and say this is what's going to happen, the changes happening around. I love these little changes that you put in. But what would be the biggest change from script to what we actually got to see in the finished product?
That's a good question. Just got me thinking.
Why do you think? For me, I was able to, put in what I call Jamie-isms. For instance, in the 2 Doctors again, Jamie's outside the hacienda and he listens and he goes back to the 2 Doctors in the olive grove, and I'd say she was saying she's an androgon. Well, of course, I said no, he wouldn't know the word. I'll say angry man. I think she said he was an angry man, and then Patrick said, no, Jamie, androgon. Aye, Doctor, that's it. So I was able to change scripts like that, words, which J&T didn't mind. And when, again in the 2 Doctors, when Colin Baker sees that tube, Dastari, And then my doctor, Patrick, in this tube going, ah, he goes, so therefore, I am he and he is thee. So I had lived, well, in that case, who will I be? And of course, they kept that in. And I call them little Jamieisms. And luckily, you know, we had John Nathan Turner then was great, because it seems like a gag, but it wasn't. You know, it's a Jamieism. You know, he's able to ask these questions. You know.
Well, I actually can't think of any major changes that would have made the story any different. The only things I can remember, I can't remember exactly what they are, but obviously the odd line maybe which wouldn't correspond with an action or something, which only comes out when an actor's actually doing it. And then because they said, well, we'll go across here and then pick up at the river. And so you do it, and then you stop. You say, no, I can't do that, because I wouldn't, because I just said this over here and I put that down there, so I wouldn't have time to go there. So we all work it all out. But it's that sort of thing, which, because you didn't know, because you've done in rehearsal, you obviously would never know that that's what we did. But that's about the only sort of thing I can think. Nothing sort of particularly major that would have impacted on me any of the episodes. No.
After the Faceless ones, we had Pauline Collins in it, and Pauline and Ben were leaving, and we actually got on so well with Pauline Collins, we suggested that she come and join us as a companion in the TARDIS, and she turned them down. I mean, to win an Oscar, she turned us down. Pauline Collins, Shirley Valentine.
Yeah.
What happens to her now? She could be here now.
She could be here now. Well, that'd be lovely. Right, any more? Yes, my lovely.
After having been there through all the years and having the experience from the early on, and having them constantly add little bits about the Doctor's background, because you know when you first start watching it, you know he's this mysterious old man in the box, and then now you see that he has all this backstory, and he keeps slipping in little bits of the backstory. Do you feel that it's been like it makes sense from the beginning till now, all the little bits that they've thrown in about his backstory?
Good, we want to hear it.
Yeah, I think it's the thing with Doctor Who. They can add things. You know, he has a wife, or he's got two hearts, or you know, they can add stuff like that. There's a couple of things they did add, which I thought didn't need to do that. But that's the character. You can add stuff to it, and I think when you get a new producer or new writers, they always say, well, I'll put this, that's my sort of stamp then. I made the Doctor do that, or I make it. And a lot of writers are always looking for new monsters, because then they get the residuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
For all the models that are made as well.
That's right.
A pal of mine, Keith Temple, he wrote and slipped this new monster in. And I think Stephen Moffat said, Keith, this monster that comes in here, no. Oh, but it's a good idea. No. We'll stick to the Daleks, or we'll get the monster. No. But a little story about the Ice Warriors. Once the Ice Warriors' costumes, once they were bolted in, they couldn't sit down. They were bolted to the hub. They couldn't sit down. So Bernard Breslau, playing the King Ice Warrior, the leader, he had a shooting stick, and his dresser would stick the shooting stick up his bottom, so he could sit back and just at least lean back because he had his costume on. And it's very disconcerting if you're playing a scene, Colin and I playing a scene here, the camera's there, out the corner of your eye, there's this Ice Warrior sitting on a shooting stick, reading the Racing Post. Yeah, just reading the Racing Post, yeah.
Brilliant.
And Bernard Breslau was a big movie star in those days. He was a movie star.
And he was a big fella too.
And he was a big fella. They hired him. What did they do? They covered him with slime and a helmet. You couldn't tell it was him.
Yeah.
So, God bless him, he could have actually sat in an armchair reading his lines, and one of the extras could have actually just been walking around. But Bernard Breslau said, no, I'm the actor, I'm going to play the Ice Warrior. And God bless him, he put all the costume on and did it, and acted the part. But you could have just sat like the Daleks, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That's an English accent you've got there. Where are you from?
Oh, Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Oh, right.
The last bus has just gone, you know. Yeah. Not Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham.
Nice guy up there, isn't it? Oh, I get up there. Yeah, it's great. Birmingham's done a lot of work in Birmingham, haven't we? Anyway, anyways, obviously, because I joined Doctor Who in about, I don't know, I can't remember, it was the Baker years, I've forgotten. The Daleks came back for the first time after a long absence. And so I obviously battled them with the Doctor. And then the most recent one I did with David and Billy, it was the return of the Cybermen after a long time. So they are the only two that I've actually ever known. And I think I would go for the Cybermen, especially the new Cybermen. They were huge.
No, our Cybermen were worse.
They were. And when we were filming in
England.
In England. In Cardiff. We were in Cardiff, see, and we were in Cardiff. It was freezing cold, and there were about 10 of these guys in these the suit. They looked really, really, really good. And when they all started walking towards you, you think, oh my God, you know. And I knew there were just people inside them, and I, just had coffee with them 10 minutes ago. But they were very menacing and fantastic. I thought that they were really, really good.
You see, our Cybermen in the black and white days, their shoes were Wellington boots sprayed silver. So they could slide up beside you so you wouldn't know they're there. This new lot, you can hear them coming, you can leg it. But ours can just But yeah, they were, to me, they were quite frightening because there was no emotion. They just had those two dots on that sort of mouth. But when we did the first Dalek show, I couldn't wait to work with the Daleks. And I loved it, and there's an old unwritten law, you must never touch the props, you know, never fool around, you might break something. So lunchtime one day, everyone was having a lunch, and I went to the studio, and there was this Dalek. I got in, closed the lid, I was like, I'm a Dalek, I'm a Dalek, all that. And suddenly I hear somebody come here, God, it could be the director, producer, prop man, you know. So I just sat in this Dalek, like, and these two actors came up and leant on me, because I'm in the Dalek. And they go, this bloody show, the script is crap. Who wrote this rubbish? Director couldn't direct the people. They're slagging the show off. And after about 5 minutes, I said, I heard that, I'm going to tell. And I walked away and they just imagine leaning on a wardrobe, you know, and the wardrobe, so he walks, who's in there? You know, I got beer all week, I got beer really all week.
When we were rehearsing, you reminded me, when we were rehearsing at what we used to call the Acton Hilton, which was a BBC rehearsal room in Acton, which is a suburb of London. And we had the Daleks, but they were just sort of little cages with like a seat and sort of casters, and you could get about 3 or 4 guys used to sit in it, just sort of walk themselves around with just their bodies were showing, you know, they didn't have the top bit on. And we were in the studio, we were actually recording, or it was on a recording day, we were doing a camera rehearsal, and they all had to go out the door. And it was rehearsed, the one particular one went out first, followed by next one. So they had a sequence in which they went out the door. So they still had their heads off, and there was a huge, like a traffic jam of Daleks trying to get through the door. They'd all missed it. And one who was a very, very nice boy who was playing this particular Dalek, he said, I'm supposed to go first. that was so funny.
John Scott Martin, was he one of the Dalek operators? John Scott Martin with long grey hair, and he, as you say, rehearsed with a little skirt on, but he'd be knitting. And he's like, how can I be terrified of a Dalek? And there he is sort of knitting like that. But the ice warriors, how they killed somebody, there was a mirror made of rubber, shiny, shiny mirror. And the actor would run up, face the mirror, but the camera would be shooting on his mirror image. And a prop man would pull this handle, so when the ice warrior killed him, it looked like his body was convulsing like that, convulsing. So this ice warrior would go, I'm scared, kill. And the actor ran up, the camera was on the and the prop man would, and the handle came off. And the ice warrior would go, come on, ah, shit, Mr. Bucker. Any more questions?
Oh, look, there's lots of people. Yes.
Speaking for the American fans right now.
Oh.
Do you think there's something that the Americans don't get about the show, being its British origin and such? Not that, here it is,
You should tell us.
Yeah.
You tell us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody's still, you seem to be just as knowledgeable as obviously the Fraser and I do these things in England as well. And you're just as knowledgeable as the British show, in fact.
And you get the show, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here now, because you say, oh, I don't get that show, that Dark Turtle thing, I don't get that. No. I'm sticking with Star Trek.
Yes, sir.
Said on that, when Doctor Who was being revived back in 2005, there was some talk about not bringing it here because people wouldn't get it because it's so British. And we're sitting here going, well, hello, Monty Python, Old Towers, Old Doctor Who.
We were actually going to do the two Doctors in New Orleans, which we were all looking forward to. We were so excited. And then American money, for some reason, they pulled American money, so that's why we shot it in Seville, which we were really peed off about, because I've never been to New Orleans, and I was really looking forward to going to New Orleans, but Seville was lovely. It was lovely. It was very hot in the two Doctors. In fact, one day it was so hot, I saw a dog chasing a cat, and they were both walking. That's very hot.
He always puts in gag, isn't he? That's funny. Talking about gags, and you realise, you found this out a short while ago, that my great-great-great-grandfather was killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was camping in the field next door, and he went over and asked him to keep the noise down.
Somebody shot him. But a lot of Americans have a Scottish affiliation. We were filming in Seville, 7 o'clock in the morning. I get into the lift, and I've got Jamie's kilt, sword belt, frilly shirt, the full claymore, the lot. And there's an American guy with a coat, baseball cap, sitting there, standing in the lift. I get in, and he looks, I'm Scotch too, you know. And I thought, this American guy, I always think Scotsmen go on holiday, wearing a kilt, swords, and, oh hi, I'm away down the beach now. He didn't go, my God, what are you wearing? I'm Scotch too, you know. He carry on drinking his coat. Any more? Yes. Oh, at the back.
What do you think about the popularity of Doctor Who, like classic Doctor Who versus new Doctor Who? I feel like a lot of people know about the new series, especially in America, but less people know about the classic Doctor Who. And also, like, some people, like one of my teachers, he's Australian, he told me growing up, he was like the only person who knew really well. Here, he knew the new series is very different. It's more of a popular fan. I feel like that's true in like London as well, where like it wasn't as popular. The old series wasn't as popular as the new series now.
The new series is not as popular, or the old series?
Like more popular, more people, there's a bigger fan base, more people into it.
But it's moved with the times. I mean, you know, when we had 100 Daleks, there'll be a camera and 3 Daleks going around the camera 30 times, you know. Now with CGI, they just have 1,000.
Plus the fact that, of course, the fact is that when did it actually start? The first series? 63, was it? Thank you. There were not that many television sets in England, so not a lot of people saw it. And obviously now, everybody must have at least 2 or 3 sets in their house. I mean, with the kids, and one in the lounge, one in the kitchen or whatever. So many more people see the new series because so many more people have got the facilities to actually view the new series. And obviously the new series has had an awful lot more money thrown at it. They've spent an awful lot of money we go on location and everything, whereas on the classic we did the odd bit of filming here and there. Mostly it was set in the studios, but now it's virtually done entirely on location in and around England. Yeah, that's right.
And also, it's immediacy now. In the old days, you had a 6-part series, so at the end of a Saturday night, will the Doctor be killed? Will Jamie be killed? Well, what will happen? But now it's immediate. It's one story. Did you see Doctor Who last night? Yeah, watched it. There's no. I like that serial version of, you know, even if it's 4 episodes, there's a cliffhanger at the end.
That's right. Well, when I did the first one, it was a 2-parter, and then when I did the last one with Billy and David, it was also a 2-parter. 45 minutes long. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Something. Right.
Yeah, I was just, first, do you watch the new series, and like, how do you feel it compares? Like, do you love it or hate it, or?
The new series to me is, I mean, because the budgets have gone up. It's very like a first feature film, you know. There's a lot of, but I do like Matt Smith. I like Matt Smith, and I think because he reminds me a lot of my Dr. Patrick Troughton, you know, with the bow tie and his sort of hand movements and stuff like that. And when I first heard he was going to be 23 years old, I thought, it's very young to be a doctor.
Yeah, I was worried. Yeah.
You know, how can he burst into a room and say, I'm a scientist, you know, I know everything. But I do like Matt Smith, and I think he's very good with it.
Yeah.
But their budget, as I said earlier, you know, our budget was £1,000 for the whole story. That was, they now spend, you know, £1,000 a minute.
Yeah, £950 is your fee, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But the difference that I found, I'm sorry sir, I come to you in 1 second. The difference I found in doing the classic and the new was literally we did not have the rehearsal time. You just arrive in Cardiff, you look at your lines, and you go on and you do it. It's as simple as that. Okay, you can make a mistake a couple of times, but it's just a case of...
It's on film now, it's on film, not sort of old cameras.
No, that's right. Yeah, it's a single camera, it wasn't multi-camera. So it was a single. And,
that's a big difference as well.
Yeah, it is. It takes longer with a single camera. You know, it's amazing. When you were in the studio and you got about sort of 4 or 5 cameras, there was a camera on me, a camera on the Daleks, a camera on Fraser, and they just cut from shot to shot. But now each shot is done individually. It's, for instance, you say for argument's sake, this was a television set of Doctor Who. I'd be here doing my scene with Fraser, and the camera would be on us both. And then we would do a single shot, so there'd be a shot on Fraser with my shouldering shot, which they call a dirty shot. A clean shot would be when it's just a clean shot of somebody. And then so I'd say to Fraser, do you want to find a Guinness? He always says yes. Would you want to find a Guinness? And for Fraser to say, I'd love one, Colin, they would then knock that wall down, put the camera around here on Fraser. So it would be that. But they didn't do it literally like that. They did every shot that way, and then every shot that way. But it meant rebuilding that part of the set, but you know.
You could do one scene and shoot it 8 times, so you're exhausted. I've only got one scene today, but you've shot it, because you have to keep the emotions up, the energy, if it's on his close-up. I can't go, yeah, I hate you. No, don't worry. I've got to, no, I hate you. No, I'm going to kill you. You've got to, so you can do one scene, but the master shot, the close-up, the 2 shot, you've got to ignore it. You can do one scene, but 8 times.
Yeah, absolutely. And movies, when you make a big movie, a big budget movie, they reckon, I think that they on a sort of like a 10-hour day shoot, they reckon they will be very happy with about 4 minutes of usable film, which is a lot of film. But because of the advent of tape, video, they can actually see the shots, instead of what they used to do years ago, shoot it, and then they have the following morning, they'd have to go into the theatre and see what they call the rushes. They were rushed to the developers and have it developed so they could watch it, and then they would choose their shots. But now it can be done, it's cheaper, it doesn't use so much film stock, because film stock is exceedingly expensive. But with the advent of video, there's a video camera right beside the main television, film camera or whatever. So.
You had a question?
Yes, I'm so sorry, so I'm hanging on here.
No, it's fine. Yeah, just thinking of the comparison, as you guys have seen of the newer stories and the earlier ones. I've seen others who've never seen the older ones, and when they go to them, there's sometimes they're criticized or they're unsure about them because of pacing. Like a lot of the earlier shows, you know, the Second Doctor and the Third and the First, the stories were 6 parts longer and seemed to be a bit more slow in developing the stories, which were always fun. The newer ones seem to be more quick, you know, a bit more frantic. Is that just sort of a time, like, you know, a generational thing, do you think? Or
I think so. I think that it is, I think it just keeps the viewer interested, being so short, you know, it's like...
well, everybody's in a rush now, anyway.
Well,
everybody's in a rush, you know, rushing here, rushing there.
That's right. And then you get, I love the series 24, but it's 24 episodes, you know, before you get to the end. But yeah, it's 2 episodes of a story. I think it holds the viewer's interest anyway, as opposed to making them wait for that for 15 weeks before they know the outcome.
I mean, if you see The Tomb and the Cybermen, there's a lovely scene between Patrick and Victoria, and a little slow scene where she's talking about how she misses her family and he's missing. You couldn't have it today. You know, a human story. There'd be monsters here, guns flying. You couldn't have a lovely little gentle story. Everybody's asleep except Patrick and Victoria talking about her father. You wouldn't have it nowadays because it's going to be rush, rush, bang, bang, bang. Car chases. Yeah, TARDIS chases. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. What's it like today, looking back, either with the Colin Baker years, Patrick Troughton years? Now, this has become an epic, iconic series, and it's a part of history, it's part of science fiction history. And the sound that TARDIS makes is as familiar to the people in this audience as the song Yellow Submarine. Everybody knows it. It's almost part of our DNA. What's it like to look back at your efforts, either with Colin Baker or with Patrick's years?
Well, we do the DVDs now. We do a commentary on them, so people can buy them, watch the show, or they click it onto commentary. And whenever they ask me to do it, they say, "Oh, Fraser, we'll send you a clip of the whole show, so you can actually." And I said, "No, I've got this lovely memory that I can remember things that happened, you know, and I just watch it and talk as I'm going along. And I love to watch it. You talk like happy times. It was 3 of the happiest years of my life doing that show. And also, if I watch it, oh, I'm going to tell that story there. Then Wendy Padbury might turn up, sitting beside me, and she starts to tell her story. I go, oh, no, I wanted to tell that. So it's better not to rehearse anything. For me, I just like to watch it, and it's... people come up and say, oh, we watched The Dominators, and I love the commentary, I love the silly gags we do, and, you know, talking about it. I just love watching the show, and when the more they find, you know, I think they're going to be doing the Ice Warriors in animation, because it's a 6-parter, they've got 2 stories missing. Excuse, you're late, have you got a note? See us in the class afterwards, Miss Lowen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was quite strange when I first did my first Doctor Who, and I suspect that the Fraser will probably feel exactly the same. We had no idea that it would be the way that it's turned out.
It's a children's show.
Such a children's show.
5:15,
yeah,
kids TV.
I knew I was doing it. I thought, oh great, I'm working again. I mean, you know, nice job for an actor to do. But little did I know, and obviously little did Fraser know, that it would happen like this. You know, we get taken to various places around the world, in London and Birmingham, and police conventions. I never knew that was going to happen. Never in a million years did I think that was going to happen.
Something I did all those years ago, and I've now seen loads of America, been to Australia. You know, just say, something happened as a children's television show at 5:15 after the football results and before the 2 Ronnies or whatever. It was just a children's show.
Yeah.
And that's why Patrick, he was having such a good time, and so was I, but his wife was saying, you must leave, you're doing children's television, you must leave, you're a better actor than that. And my agent, Darling, you've done 3 years now, you must do films, you do, because those did films with up and coming thing. You must do films now. But I was having such a good time, and so was Patrick, that, you know, if I didn't have my agent mithering me in my ear and his wife, we'd still be there now. You'd have to have shot us to get us out of the TARDIS, because we were having a great time.
That's right, it's very strange, but also, years and years ago, it wasn't really a done thing for actors to do TV commercials. You know, oh, you're doing a TV commercial, but now, of course, I mean, everyone loves to do them, and I'm quite fortunate. I do quite a few voices in London for TV commercials and narrations, which is great. Lots of actors do them. Really, lots of actors do them, which is another string to your bow. Brilliant, easy to do, love doing them.
Anybody else? Yes.
Do you have a favorite new companion?
I've always said that I would never have left if I knew Leela was going to come into the show. Because when you think about it, Leela and Jamie were the only 2 companions that ever carried a weapon.
Very similar.
We only had, you know, both, and I could just see that, I had this vision of the Doctor and the water's rising, he's tied to the stake, and the sea serpents and alligators coming towards him. And I got to rescue him with my knife, and Leela said, no, I'll rescue him. And the 2 of us ended up fighting, rolling on the floor with our knives out, thinking, who's going to rescue him? And I was like, for God's sake, I don't know who's going to... What of you, will you just go? And I had this fancy of Jamie and Leela wrestling on the floor. And then we could use her loincloth to clean the TARDIS window, you know. I think Leland would.
Audio play.
That's an audio. What about you? Favourite companion?
Favourite companion? I like Perry because I did my
Oh,
thing
yes.
with it, and I worked with Billy, but didn't have many scenes. I didn't have any scenes with Billy,
Little O'Brien.
Little, yeah.
She was good fun in the Two Doctors, where towards the end when she's lying on that table and Colin and I rush in and he splashes the water. Oh, oh, Dak, you know. We had a little plan with Gary Downey, who was the first assistant, you know, the floor manager, that we would do it, and if the take was fine, he'd go, lovely, but we've got to do one more take. And that meant, so the take was in the can, but we could do, so we dashed into take two, we dashed in, Colin got this jug of water and and then we started to laugh. He said, "Are you bastards?" But she kept acting until she realised that we were really, you know, laughing. And we never, because we were so laughing, we never had to say, "Did you take that? Was it, or was it just?" Because I'm sure if they taped it, there was a lovely blooper there. I must just throwing the water over it.
Yeah, that would have gone on to a thing we have in England called Auntie's Bloomers, which is a BBC outtake programme, which is, I've been on that once. Right, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that we've actually come to the end of our session with you all. Thank you so much for coming.
In the autograph room, signing autographs, books, pictures, thighs, you know, whatever. We'll sign it.